Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dundee Church Podcast. My name is J.D. Gorlett. I'm the senior pastor here at Dundee Presbyterian Church in lovely downtown or midtown or wherever, middle of Omaha, Nebraska. And we are very thankful to have you with us. I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague, the lovely and talented Keith Holmes.
Ooh, I'm still lovely and talented.
How are you?
How
are you, my good man?
I am doing very well, thank you kindly very much.
And
I'm excited to be here.
Well, there you go. And we continue in our study of the book of John.
Yeah.
What number is this? This is like 24 studies,
right?
And we're up to chapter 13. And so you do the math. We are really diving into the book of John, and we encourage you to check out our other podcasts. I think they're pretty good, despite what you say about them.
I think they're great.
I feel like they're pretty good, and so we hope that you'll check those out, and that this podcast would be a companion to your study. I mean, I think the vision here is that you're a person who's looking to study a book, the book of John, and we're just kind of helping you think through different passages.
Yeah, exactly.
As you do your own study, we're asking questions, we're giving some speculation.
Hopefully sparking thought.
There you go. Hopefully. Depends on the intelligence of the listener.
Well,
If they're more intelligent than
Which,
us,
let's face it, it's pretty good odds that they're a lot more smart.
We've just reduced our audience by a lot. All right, we're in John chapter 13 with that. We're in John chapter 13, verses 1 through 20. This is a scene that many people know or think they know really well. It is Jesus washing the disciples' feet. Yeah. This happens on Maundy Thursday, the night before Jesus dies. This is what he does. I'm going to open with this question. So read those verses 1 through 20, John chapter 13, and have this question in mind. Keith, I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about this. What's the most surprising thing that following Jesus has caused you to do?
Interestingly, I think it's work for him. Become a vocational pastor, someone who...
That was surprising to you?
That was surprising to me. I mean, it happened gradually over time as my walk deepened with Christ, and as I got to know him and I realized what his will for me was. But I think if you go back and ask the 20-year-old Keith, or tell the 20-year-old Keith Holmes, hey, in 30 years, you're going to be
earning
a living working for Christ.
Yeah.
He would have laughed at you. I mean, I was not interested. At that time, I'd fallen away from my faith. I was seeking my own pleasures. I was doing my own thing. And I would have laughed.
Right.
Dude, whatever, here, have another hit or something, right? Have another drink, because that's just, you obviously are drunk, so have some more.
Wow.
Because it just did not, I was going to Broadway. I was seriously contemplating Hollywood or Broadway at the time. I was a theater guy. I loved it. It was the thrill. It fulfilled me at the time, at least that's what I thought. And so, I was going to do my own thing. And then, got introduced into my life a woman who showed me, what it meant to be a follower of Christ. And I realized she had something I didn't have.
That you wanted.
That I wanted.
Yeah.
That peace, that sense of, wow, that's just amazing. This woman is amazing. And then 31 years later, she's, buying a new house with me.
That's right. You're on the move.
We're moving to a new house together. So we got married, and through that development, over time, I was led to leave the secular vocation that I was doing and move into full-time ministry.
A long-term surprise,
right? And it was shocking. And even still, I look back at that decision. I'm like, is this really what you want me to do, God? That's crazy. Are you sure?
Yeah.
And so here I am.
So for me, I became a Christian when I was 21, and I think the idea of being a pastor of a church was always there to a certain extent, or very early on was there. The concept of the thought, I could possibly do that, or I could see myself doing that. That's always been an easy thought. And here I am, pastor of a church, and I have been for 25 years in a variety of places.
It feels like 25.
Yeah, it's really 70. It's really It's only been 3 weeks. It feels like 25 years. So the idea of being a pastor of a church was palatable to me, and seemed to be possible and seemed to fit. Yeah. That was not that really is not tremendously surprising over the last few years. Although back if you would have talked to me in high school and said you're going to be a pastor of a church, that would have been surprising. But once I became a Christian, doing it vocationally was not too much of a surprise to me.
Interesting, yeah.
Absolutely everything else has been a surprise to me. So, I mean, what I am as,
Right.
as a senior pastor,
Yeah.
no surprise. Okay, that is not that shocking. But where I've gone, I mean, I've preached in how many continents?
Right.
How many
Yeah.
different countries? Not as many as some, but a number of places. I've met people that I've walked away and thought, oh my goodness gracious, how in the world did I possibly meet this wonderful person and have this fantastic ministry experience with them?
Right.
I have sat down with people to dinner with people who were sleeping on the street. I've sat down with people who were still in prison and getting out of working their way towards parole, and listened to their stories, and walked away saying, how else? But by the grace of Jesus Christ and through the gospel of Jesus Christ would I ever have an experience or meet this person. I mean, I've served soup and at soup kitchens. I've all this stuff. In South Korea, I preached to 3,000 or 4,000 people or something like that in one day.
Right, it's crazy.
It was just crazy.
Yeah.
What am I? I did what? And so all of that. I was a youth minister. All this kind of stuff. I've written curriculum. All of that is ridiculously surprising to me, and it sounds like I'm bragging on myself. I hope I'm not, because I'm just amazed at what God did.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, who else could have done all of that stuff?
And he
except for God?
uses you through you. Those things.
I
are brought-
hope.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I know you well enough, and have seen your stuff, so to speak. I've seen your curriculums. I mean, for this study, we're using a curriculum you've created, dude. This is, I mean.
Yeah, now I'm podcasting.
Right, and now we're podcasting. Right.
Who saw that coming? That's a good point.
But what God has done through us, because seriously. Who else gets to do this stuff? I mean, and what a great God we serve that He allows us. He allows us. Because I don't think you're bragging. Like I said, I know you well enough to know you're not bragging.
I hope I'm not.
No,
I'm just amazed. I'm amazed at the journey.
Exactly,
I'm
the
amazed
journey itself. And I think it's exciting. I know, like I said, I know for a fact I would never have been a part of this.
Yeah.
Or never intended to be a part of this. And like you, I mean, I've been to Colombia, I've been to Albania, I've been to places that, it's like, you're just like, why would you go there? Because Jesus told me to, and it's been so.
I felt as if He did.
Yeah, and it's been exciting. Now, getting there can be half the fun, and getting back can sometimes be a trip. But it's like, but man, He puts us in these positions. We talked about this last week. He puts us in these places what we don't understand. That we're like, what are you doing, God?
Yeah.
And He says, don't you worry about it. I got this.
I got it figured out. And it may not make sense to us, but it sure does to Him.
Amen.
And so we're reading John chapter 13. Again, I encourage you to read the first 20 verses. And you might stop and then come back to our conversation once you have the passage in mind. This is the washing of the disciples' feet on Maundy, Thursday, as I previously referenced. Jesus took a towel and washed the feet of the disciples, went around the table and washed all their feet. The job of a slave. Only a slave would do something like this. Right. A servant of the lowest order would do this. What is most amazing to you about this scene?
This might spark something for you, because it certainly sparked for me when I saw that question and I thought about it. I think most amazing about this scene is that He shares this all with Judas. In the knowledge that he is going to be betrayed by this guy, of the 12 disciples, he still bows down and washes the feet of his betrayer.
And has communion with him.
And has communion with him.
Yeah.
And eats at the same table with him. And all I kept thinking about this as I thought about this last night as I was reading through it, it was just like, could I
if you were Christ,
possibly do that?
If you were Christ, you wouldn't have done that?
I don't know that I could. I mean, if I knew you were going to betray me, I doubt highly I could be with you. I don't think I could look at you and you know, I think it'd just be.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that's most amazing. I mean, the fact that he bows, you know, that he gets down and he washes the disciples' feet as a servant, as a you know, someone that would, you know, like you said, it's the job of a slave to do this. But the fact that he did it for his betrayer as well as for the rest of us, as the rest of them, excuse me. It's just, to me, that's the most amazing thing.
I have a couple of questions. So you went with Judas, and I'm the same way. I'm amazed by Judas that he could have his feet be washed and have it not by Jesus and have it not affect him at all.
Right.
I'm also amazed that Jesus makes this, and he clarifies it. He gets done and he says, "Do you know what I've done to you? Do you understand? You understand this?
Yeah.
I am your master. You call me master. That's what I am." And so he makes it clear. Yeah. I'm better than you. I'm greater than you, and yet I wash your feet. And this is not a deal where I'm here to wash your feet. I'm doing this to set an example for you as to how to treat other people in my name. I want you to be a servant of them. That's an amazing part of the Christian message. I am Lord, and I give you this message. I give you this blessing to be my disciple, and it is by no means an opportunity for you to lord it over other people.
Right. As the Gentiles do, it says in another place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want you to take on this mentality. When you think about that, compared and over against every other ethos, every other ideology, every other ism that has been proposed or advocated throughout the time. This is completely and totally the mentality, the approach to life of a lowly servant and and we've talked about that before. We talked about that last week, that the servant, the true servant of Jesus is going to be right on his wing.
Right.
And here you are. Just keep washing feet. Just keep on washing feet. And that is a remarkable message, central to the Christian
No,
gospel.
and I would add that no matter whose feet they are, you wash them. It isn't up to you. You don't get to decide whose feet. If you're truly following Christ and his example, you don't just pick and choose the feet you wash. You wash the feet of those that are there for you, that he presents to you.
And then why did Jesus do this? If we ask that question, I think part of obviously I would assume that the answer is that the reason that he did this was that they needed to hear this message. That I don't know if I should go so far as to say that Jesus was afraid but maybe he was afraid that they hadn't, the disciples hadn't gotten the message and that they'd missed this part of the message, that once he had died and rose again, that they would think that being his disciple was all about the expression of power and establishing their power and their prominence and all this kind of stuff. And he wanted to make sure that they had a visceral memory of what they're really supposed to, the mentality that they're supposed to really have, that he was concerned in this moment, the night before he died, that they still didn't get this essential part of what it meant to belong to him and to follow him. I think that's why he did this. Anything else come to mind?
Again, building off of, I really do believe that it was the Holy Spirit that invested that Judas thought into my head, because from there I built onto that saying, okay, so then why did he do it? He showed us that we're not supposed to. We are not the ones that pick and choose. We are not the ones that if God has put someone in our lives, we're not to dismiss them and throw them away or get rid of them. We're to serve them. Now, whether or not that's it bears fruit or they betray us. I mean, obviously Judas is headed that way, here in the next few chapters, we'll see. But I don't know, to me, it was, I think, a lot of the same things you said there, that it was the example that he set for us, but then multiplied by the fact that he did it for Judas too, to me, as I was thinking about this.
It's also interesting and amazing what he doesn't do. These two questions go together. I mean, the first question is, what's most amazing about this scene? And why did Jesus do this? In this moment, if we consider the moment, it's Maundy Thursday. Only a few moments later, he's going to be arrested by the chief priest and put on trial that night. He's not going to sleep at all. In and in that moment before, and he knows that's coming.
Right.
He knows he's about to be betrayed by Judas. He washes Judas's feet. What doesn't he do? Let's make a list. I mean, that we might do in that moment, knowing that he's going to suffer the next day and die. He's going to be beaten. He's going to be nailed to the cross. He's going to suffer terrible pain, complete and total rejection. He doesn't retreat. He doesn't withdraw. He doesn't try to hide. He doesn't try to avoid.
Right.
He doesn't try to fight. Instead, I've only got a few minutes left. Before I get arrested, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wash your feet. I'm going to make sure that you understand what it is to be my disciple. When you think about that, that is over and against what he could have done that he didn't do. How he could have spent his time. That he chose not. He chose one thing, to wash feet, and he avoided. He didn't choose 1,000 other things that had to do with protecting himself, playing it safe, accumulating his resources and trying to maintain the status quo. All the stuff that we would have done, that any normal person might have done in that same situation, facing the end. Desperate things he doesn't do. Instead, he does this. It's a remarkable thing. And clearly, he chooses to do this because he wants to be very clear all the way unto death what he's really about. He wants there to be no confusion about who he is.
Amen.
You know?
Now, for me, it's interesting because I have the tendency to get irritated and stressed. If I knew that I was about to die, I think I'd be snapping at people. I'd be angry. I'd be like, "Didn't you? You just don't understand." I'd be yelling at my disciples. I'd be just straight up beating on Judas. Like, this is your fault. You're gonna do this to me, and get out. And all this, and just he's calm. Yes, he goes to Gethsemane. We'll talk about that. But this picture of him just draping a towel around himself, getting down on his knees with a bowl of water, and washing people's feet, the people that serve him, that are supposed to be following and serving him, he's serving them in a calm, quiet manner. Just this beautiful moment of togetherness, of this servant leadership that we talk about, and it just it's so not what I would do. I would be just bouncing off the walls.
So much of the Gospels are devoted to what Jesus could do and did do. He could calm the storm, and he did. He could raise Lazarus from the dead, and he did. He could walk on water, and he did. Yeah. Here he could, because he's the Son of God, he could have done any number of things to prevent, to delay, to escape.
Right.
And any kind of miraculous thing. And certainly while he was on the cross, as we know, he could have saved himself. He could have done exactly what the chief priests and all his haters were yelling at him to do. Save yourself, to bring yourself down from the cross. Let's see you do that. He had to listen to that, and knowing full well, I can do that in miraculous fashion. I can avoid. I can step over this whole thing and not suffer and die. And he forsakes all of that. He gives up all of that in order to wash feet. It is completely remarkable. In order simply to teach us, his disciples, one more last thing, to seal up the entire lesson of his gospel in our minds. That's the choice that he makes out of all the options. This is what you're watching. This is what you're doing. You have 1,000 channels, and you're watching this. It's amazing that he makes that choice.
I think back to Matthew when we went through the Sermon on the Mount last year. If you haven't had a chance to check those out, check them out. What a great bookend! All of it. Here he is. He says who he is. This is going to be my ministry. This is what we're going to do. And then he ends it here with that, like you said, that one last instruction: do this for your brothers and sisters. Right. Bow down and be a servant.
He's truly not a hypocrite. I'll tell you that. In a world full of hypocrites, Jesus ain't one.
Right.
I appreciate you coupling that with the Sermon on the Mount, and this being a real fulfillment of that complete and total exhaustion of all your energy into being a servant, into living for God and for the betterment of other people, being a peacemaker, being poor of spirit, and giving yourself so completely, even in a moment where it doesn't doesn't make sense and where no one else would have made this choice.
Right.
And he does. You referenced Judas before. What do you from this one scene? What do you learn about Judas? What did you learn about Judas?
I really liked how John puts it, that he wasn't really clean, that he wasn't clean.
Even though I wash your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just again, we've talked a little bit about it before, and it's just that Judas will not let anything dissuade him from his picture of what Jesus should be.
Right.
And even this, when Jesus says, "This is what you should be doing,"
Yeah.
he still says, "No, Jesus, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You got it all wrong. You're wrong, Jesus. I'm right." And he just ends up, as John puts it, not being clean.
That's interesting. And then if you look at verse 2 of chapter 13, it says, "The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him." And so many theologians have debated and wondered about the inevitability, the inescapability of Judas. That it was. What does this verse mean? That the devil, they had put it into his heart to betray? Does that mean that it was irresistible evil? That this was? Should we be sympathetic to Judas? Many people have decided to have him or look at him as having no responsibility in this, that this was unavoidable. It was predestined to be, so it doesn't really matter what Judas did because he wasn't responsible for this. He couldn't. It was unavoidable. It was inescapable. The devil had him in his grips and da-da-da-da-da-da. But that word betray is in there, that he was going to betray him. And that means there is responsibility. There is responsibility on Judas's part. And what I learn about Judas is that he is so set in his mentality that nothing that Jesus, no great thing, no obvious analogy of washing feet is going to reach his cold heart. It's not going to change at this point. We can speculate about Judas, and it's fascinating to do so. Whether or not after he betrayed Jesus, he was forgivable. Of course, we'll never know because he killed himself afterwards. Right. Did he repent? Did he, in that moment? No, he didn't, because he didn't come back to Jesus. He didn't seek forgiveness. He just ended his life. Was it inevitable? Was he never going to be a disciple, or was there a moment in there somewhere where he could have been a disciple? Did Jesus choose him, and did Jesus fail? I mean, all these fail. I mean, is that even possible?
Right.
All of these kinds of questions, and Scripture alludes and helps, but doesn't maybe take us all the way. It leaves us in a state of speculation. But it is challenging to me how dull of heart we can be to who Jesus is and what Jesus is doing. Certainly Judas is that. He's sitting there eating the meal, dipping his bread, hearing the words of institution from the Last Supper, having his feet washed by Jesus, and it has absolutely no effect at all. And that is remarkable to me and frightening to me.
But yeah, exactly. Here we see Judas has seen and tasted the goodness of Christ, and yet still can reject him. How diligent do we need to be?
Right.
That we're not doing that.
And we can easily write it off and say, well, I would never do that. I would never be Judas. Don't do that to yourself. Don't be so self-assured and so confident that you need to see yourself in Scripture. And so in order to see yourself in this Scripture, you need to consider how much you are like Judas and how much you are like Peter, who we'll get into we'll talk about here in just a minute.
Right.
But it is remarkable that a human being can become like Judas in this scene and leave this table, which he literally does. He leaves this table and goes and gets the cohort together and has Jesus arrested. And this is after he saw Lazarus raised from the dead, after he has dinner at Martha and Mary's house, and he sees, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, and sees the act of worship there. After all of these things,
after being sent out sent out with Jesus with the power of the Holy Spirit in him, and it just amazes me. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he never performed a miracle,
Right.
because the Holy Spirit's like, yeah, not so much.
Right, it's just
It's
fascinating.
hard. I mean, but to see everything that he saw, and how, again, it scares me too that I can be like this.
You being scared by that, any of us being scared of that, is a good thing.
Right.
As uncomfortable that is, that's the blessing.
Right.
Blessings don't always feel good. In
Right.
fact, I think most of the time blessings often make us uncomfortable, and push us to to new things.
But then in the end, when we get through that blessing, so to speak,
Right.
we realize what a blessing it really was.
Now, let me ask you this. Why does Peter say what he says? And let's go over what Peter says. So
Right.
Jesus goes around the circle, and here he comes to Peter somewhere in the middle or near the end. And
gonna
he's
wash
not
my-
first, because Peter knows that there's going to be, are you going to wash my feet?
Right.
He's obvious. You're not, and then you're not going to wash my feet.
Right.
And then Jesus
never
explains
wash
it to
my-
him, and then Peter says, "Well, then, okay, if that's the situation, then my hands, my head, that wash my whole." Why does he do this?
Well, I think
Everybody else shuts up. Why
Right.
not Peter?
Peter is, I think, overconfident in his Christianity. We just talked briefly about how we got to be careful and not be too confident when we're a Judas.
That we're better than Judas.
Right. But I think it's very important that we're not so confident that we're going to dictate to
There
God
it is, man. There
what
it
he's
is.
going to do for us.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really what he's doing.
Right.
He's just saying, "Oh no, God, do what I want you to do."
Yeah.
Then. This is it. If this is it, then I want all of it.
You're never going to wash my feet. I'm humble.
Right.
See, I'm humble before you.
Right.
You'll never wash my feet.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. And that's a nicely intended thing. But
Yeah.
he's dictating to Jesus.
Right.
He's not allowing Jesus to do Jesus the way Jesus wants to do Jesus.
Right.
If you can understand that sentence at all.
I think so.
And then when he figures it out, then when Jesus explains, "Hey, this is what then he doesn't stop telling Jesus how to be Jesus.
Right.
And again, you can have one of a couple of different reactions to it. You can sit there and you say, "Well, I'm better than Jesus. I would never do that. I'd just sit there like Thomas must have just sat there and had his feet beat with Andrew. They didn't say anything. I'd be just like those guys. I wouldn't question anything." In one sense, it's really great that Peter stops and says, "What's going on here? What are you doing
Right.
here?" I think that's really good. He's seeking to figure out what's the point of this and why. But then he makes the mistake of, "Oh, well, then you're doing it wrong,
Right.
Jesus. This is how you should do." Where does that come from? It comes from the assumption that you're smarter than Jesus. And here's news: you're not. And in that way, I'm just like, again, it's of no use. I can conclude that I wouldn't be like Peter. I can tell myself that I wouldn't be like Peter. But the value is in examining, taking a look in the mirror and saying to myself, how am I actually like Peter? How and in what way, in how many days do I do the same thing to Jesus and tell him how to do his job? And the answer is, I do that quite a bit.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think back to my prayers, and it's like, God really, even when we're praying, someone be healed. It's just like, God, heal this person.
Yeah. As if Jesus is your servant.
Right, exactly.
As if he's your errand boy.
Now, you might be thinking, "Oh, no, that's never how I pray that." It's like, if you want to, God.
Right.
If you search your heart,
Yeah.
how many times do we ask God, or we don't ask God, we tell God
Right.
what he should do in this situation that
Right.
we're praying for.
Right.
And, I like to think, I placate myself with that, "if this be your will,"
Mm-hmm.
and I think, "thy will be done" is such an important part of the
Absolutely.
of the Lord's Prayer, the way he teaches us, and it's such a big thing, because it's like, yeah, if that's what you're praying, his will be done, be ready for results that you're not going to expect or you're not going to understand sometimes.
There's certainly a missional element of this, of going out into the world element of this too, or going into different relationships, different conversations, where we'll go on a mission trip, Jesus, but we're going to do it our way. I'm
Right.
going to do it instead of I'm going to do it my way. How many times do people have a funeral and say, "I'd like to have Sinatra say I did it my way," and I'm
Right.
like, "Yeah, we're not doing
Not
that."
that.
Because if you did it your way, then you weren't following Christ.
Amen.
You know, there's
Amen.
no room for you and Christ steering the ship here.
Right.
There's only one. And
Do you imagine two people grabbing the wheel of a car and trying to
Exactly.
drive?
I'll give you one guess who's driving.
Right.
So there's a missional aspect here where maybe at our best we say, yeah, I'll go on that mission trip, but I'm gonna darn well have my expectations met of how
Right.
comfortable I'm going to be, what we're going to do, who we're going to go to, and what I'm going to give. I'm going to be the one who sets the definitions and the limitations on exactly how this is going to go. Here is this story from John 13 where Jesus is saying, I'm going to show you how to wash feet, and it's going to be by my definition of how
Right.
this is going to happen, you know?
And how hard it is for us, Peter or Judas or whoever, even in between, how hard it is for us to just let it be done. I mean, because, you got to imagine Thomas and the others, James and all those others are kind of like really just uncomfortable.
Sure.
They're squirming, they're pulling their feet back. It's
Right.
like, what are you doing?
Right.
No. And he goes, yeah, I mean, we're maybe obviously these are the two extremes that the Bible teaches us, but yeah, you got to wonder what's going through the minds of all of these guys as they watch their master
Right.
do this.
And then whom does Jesus send? He sends foot washers.
Right.
One answer. But more than that, blousing that out, he sends people who are willing to, to serve others, even when they don't understand exactly, what's going to happen and what the result is going to be. I'm going to serve in the same way that Christ, served.
Right.
And I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave the unanswerable questions alone. I'm simply going to keep my head down and keep to my work.
Just keep going. Interestingly, I read it the other way. Who does Jesus send us? Who does Jesus put into our lives?
There you go.
And I thought, wow, well, of course he sends us the poor to take care of and the lonely. But one of the interesting things is that Jesus also sends the inconvenient, those that are inconvenient for us that as Christians, because Peter was inconvenient.
Yeah.
Peter was high
Right.
maintenance for Jesus.
Right.
He was, it's like constantly, like I often say, he had to be so just disgusted every time Jesus said Simon, because he knew he had gone
was in
too
trouble.
far. He knew it because Jesus gave Simon the new name Peter, and every time that he does something bad, you see in the Bible Jesus refers to him back as Simon. Like,
Right.
Simon, that's not what.
Exactly.
So he's just,
I know I'm in trouble now.
I know. Yeah, it's the full name when mom calls you.
Exactly.
It's like, yo, get over here, Keith William Holmes Jr.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, yeah. So interesting. Yes, he sends us out, but I think he sends those to meet us, and we have to
Right.
follow his example in those meetings.
Well said. Well said. Well, this has been the Dundee Church Podcast, John chapter 13, verses 1 through 20. We're thankful for all of you listening in, and we hope that we've blessed your day. We'll see you next time.